If you're all excited for Ramadan, you'll feel even better when Ramadan is gone. Ramadan, my friend, is the month of Jihad. They say it's peaceful, but that's all a fraud. Welcome to This Week in Jihad, Ramadan, Week 1, Day 1, first iftar time. Thank you all for joining us. We have with us again the great, the one, the only, Dr. David Wood. Good morning, David.
I actually thought you were gonna rhyme Ramadan with Bomathon, but
it's been done. It's been done. We only have original work here.
Just promise you're gonna toss one of those into one of your poems at some point during Ramadan.
You got it, sir. You got it. Order taken.
Yeah. So anyway, Robert, it's I just posted a video about how I'm fasting for Ramadan.
Well, that's wonderful. Ramadan Mubarak, David.
Yeah. See, I'm on a schedule where I stay up at night and then sleep during the day. So I'm already on a Ramadan schedule, and it's I can't gorge myself the way they do when they're fasting, but you know.
So you won't gain the Ramadan paunch.
No, I won't gain that or get the Ramadan diabetes or any of the other problems that that we hear about.
Yeah, all that self-denial, man, it's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. I figured out I had to figure out how to put it, because they're claiming, fasting is associated with abstaining. And so I said, well, technically they are abstaining. They're abstaining from not gorging themselves with food.
Yeah.
And then it works. So, yeah.
I mean, at least until sundown.
Well, no, they're abstaining from not gorging themselves.
Oh, right. Yes.
So ordinarily they don't gorge themselves with food, but Ramadan gets here and they have to abstain from that self-controlled behavior.
That's a beautiful thing. There's so much we can learn, David.
It's so powerful.
Yes.
I named it. I started calling it trans fasting.
That's it. That's perfect.
It's feasting that identifies as fasting.
That's absolutely great. Just like Islam identifies as a religion of peace.
It's like that with everything. We're doing the exact opposite of what we want you to say we are. Which,
yep.
You could do that, but at this point I don't even understand how they complain about the LGBTQ stuff.
Yeah, because it's a trans religion, really.
Yeah, I mean, everything we've learned from Islam since 9/11 is that you can always do or be the exact opposite of what you want everyone to say about you. So, sorry, you keyboard jihadis, you don't get to complain about LGBTQ stuff ever.
Just scare everyone into being afraid to say the truth, and you're there, celebrated, given awards, feted. It's all there. Anyway, we got some jihad this week, unfortunately, David. You'd think they would have waited for Ramadan. But I did want to start with some good news, unusual for this program. In Sweden, we spoke a few weeks ago about how the police had unilaterally disallowed the burning of the Quran. In this context, I always emphasize, I'm not really a fan of burning books. I'd rather people read the Quran, actually, and understand it. And I think that would help people to realize what a deep threat the people who believe deeply in the Quran can be. But in any case, burning the Quran is a matter of the freedom of expression, and the Swedish appeals court has just overruled the police and said that actually burning the Quran is allowed by law.
Wow.
Yeah.
No. I mean, normally in these situations, people just don't care what the law is. They just make it up as they go along. But that is interesting.
I was surprised. The flip side of that is that in Britain, Rasmus Paludan, the famed Danish freedom fighter who has been burning the Quran, he has been barred from the country. And so Rasmus joined the club. I was barred from Britain 10 years ago actually, for the crime of wanting to lay a wreath at a memorial for drummer Lee Rigby, who was murdered by a jihadi on a London street, and the jihadi then explained with his bloody cleaver in his hand why he did it, quoting from the Quran and so on. So anyway,
that's I mean, you guys should have some sort of meeting or something, like some sort of
not
annual...
in London though.
Yeah, you can't. But like people who've been banned, maybe like meet in Malta or something like that.
Yep. Or even just to tease them, in Dublin or someplace really close, that, and make them think we're going to try to get across. Like I would want to go to Britain, I'd rather get my fingernails pulled out, but whatever.
Yeah, or go to France, but like where you're close to the UK, and watch them like line up troops to keep you out.
They know the real threats. They're on top of things in the UK. I think in context now, David, we're going to have to start with the stupid infidels in the UK stories.
Hey, one second, because along those lines, I just thought of a funny skit idea. Will be at the British border. We can even make it up and have one of those dumb palace guards with the giant hats who don't move or something like that. But you show up, and Osama bin Laden shows up.
Yes, and they say welcome, because I actually have a long list at Jihad Watch. I should publish it again, of the jihad preachers that have led into Britain since I was banned. And so I see this. I got to put this up, David. You're not missing anything cuisine-wise, Robert. I can tell you, I know this to be true. I was actually in London now 14 years ago in 2009, and I was there for quite a while. I really could not believe, I'm sorry to say, all you English folks, but I couldn't believe how bad the food was. And one morning I was walking along in London in some random place, and I saw breakfasts, bacon and eggs and what have you. And I thought, well, how can they mess that up? But
they put beans in it. They put beans in it. That's what they do.
Yeah, but not only that, the eggs were not chicken eggs. I don't know what they were, but they were not the eggs that you expect there to be.
I was
and the bacon would make you convert to Islam.
I actually like bangers and mash over there, but there was a funny movie a long time ago called A Fish Called Wanda, and a guy holds he's in the UK, he's got a plate of fish and chips, and he holds up like a French fry, and he goes, "The English contribution to world cuisine, the chip."
That's it. I think isn't that the movie where the guy eats the goldfish?
Yeah. That was Otto. He won the Oscar for that. That was Kevin Kline won the Oscar.
Well, that's probably because the food in England was so bad that he figured the goldfish would be better. Anyway,
he ate a green one and he goes, "Ew, avoid the green ones." He goes, "They're not ripe yet."
Oh dear.
Funny stuff.
All right. Also, out of the wonderful UK, we have a rapist from Iran who is fighting deportation. And what do you think, David? Did he win?
I'm gonna go with yeah.
You can't go wrong betting in this way with the British. A judge ruled that he could be persecuted in Iran, and therefore he was allowed to stay in Britain, even though he apparently lied through the entire proceedings, and everything he was saying about himself and his situation turned out to be false. Nonetheless, they're more worried about his well-being in the hypothetical situation he would face in the Islamic Republic of Iran than they are about his potential victims in England. Now,
notice the assumption, by the way, right? The assumption that everyone in this situation is governed by is, even though everything you've told us about your situation in Iran is completely ridiculous and we have no real reason to think that you'd be in trouble, it's still more likely that you'll be treated worse there for no reason than you'll be treated in the UK after raping someone.
Yep.
It's like you'll be rapists are treated better here than we'll just assume anyone's going to be treated in Iran.
That's it.
UK.
Yeah, here's a good one too. Somebody says, if you take a small dinghy to the edge of British waters, the French will help you migrate to the UK. Now, it's certainly true. The French have been escorting people across the English Channel so that they can take up residence in the various hotels that the British government has commandeered to house the inundation of migrants that they have now. And yet, I suspect, as you said with your skit, that if Rasmus Paludan and I, or I alone, or Pamela Geller, or any number of people who were barred from the country were to show up, that suddenly the British police would be out in force. Where when the French are leaving these migrants there every day, you can't find a cop, a bobby, as it were.
Hey, we should do a little social experiment. You publicly declare that after all these years of criticizing Islam, you've suddenly seen the power of the Quran as you were putting it together. And so you've converted to Islam and you've changed your name to Durka Durka Durka, Jihad, Muhammad Allah, Allahu Akbar, and see if they let you in then. And all of a sudden they'll roll out the red carpet for you.
Yeah, that's true.
They'll be inviting you to the the palace and stuff.
Lucrative speaking tour would be marvelous. Also in London, David, it's Ramadan, and for the very first time, can you see the screen today?
Oh, nice.
For the very first time, they are decorating the streets for Ramadan, and people have happily noted that this is the first time that they've done this for anything besides Christmas. And
Hey, I have to say it's better than what they normally do during Ramadan, and that's when jihadis decorate the streets with blood.
This is true. It might turn out to be bitterly ironic, however, if Ramadan turns out this year the way it does in other years. I'll just note real quickly a couple of quotes. Let's see. This is from the Palestinian Authority's Supreme Sharia Judge, Mahmoud al-Habash. Ramadan is not a month of laziness, but rather a month of activity, of effort.
What?
Hey,
I've got the statistics, Robert. I've got the statistics. Productivity across the board decreases between 35 and 50% during Ramadan.
He doesn't mean effort like that. Hear the man out. Effort and hard work, as it was in the life of the Prophet, a month of jihad, conquest, and victory. So he's talking about blowing stuff up. He's not about doing work.
Okay, well, I'll give him that then.
Maulana Bashir Ahmed Khaki, Khaki. I'm familiar. I used to wear his pants. Ramadan is the pious month of jihad and killing. Those who attain martyrdom while waging jihad, the doors of heaven remain open. And Al-Qaeda says Ramadan is a month of holy war and death for Allah. It is a month for fighting the enemies of Allah and Allah's messenger, the Jews, and their American facilitators. So that's what London's got to look forward to.
Yeah, if that doesn't make you want to celebrate the holiday, I don't know what will.
Yeah, they're going to have a great month over in London. All right, also in Britain, there's a lot of stupid infidel stuff out of the UK this week, David. And we have Ajmal Shapal, who is on trial in Birmingham Crown Court. That's in the UK. That's not Birmingham, Alabama. That's a different thing altogether. We're talking about London and Birmingham over in England. And so Ajmal Shapal is actually on trial for... He praised the killer of Samuel Paty, the French teacher, as brave as a lion. Praised the killers of the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists and so on, you know. And anyway, Dan Posson Pounds. Dan Posson Pounds. That's a hyphenated name.
Sounds like a Charles Dickens character.
Yes, Dan Posson Pounds is the prosecuting attorney really for this fellow Shapal, and he said this is a case about terrorism. That this defendant, the encouragement by this defendant to commit acts of terrorism, he did this by publishing tweets on his Twitter account, which specifically encouraged others to behead those whom he believed had insulted his religion being Islam. I hope that I hardly need say that this is not a case about mainstream Islam, a worldwide peaceful religion with nearly 2 billion followers. The focus of this case is on the beliefs and the actions of the defendant and others he was in contact with or referred to, that is part of that tiny, tiny minority of Muslims who have used religion to justify violence against others. Dan Posson Pounds. Now, what do you think, David? Is he right?
About what? The tiny minority?
Yeah, that this case has nothing to do with Islam.
Yeah,
really,
of
it's.
Course. Yeah, of course. I mean,
there he is.
Oh,
There's
well,
Dan.
I mean, he just looks like he knows a lot about jihad.
Yeah, you know this guy. He's read the Quran several times. He's very familiar. He's deeply familiar with the contents.
Every last one of them. It's like they've all. It's like here is the script we've been programmed to read every single time anything happens that has anything to do with a terrorist attack.
That's it. That's exactly right.
But I mean, just think about it. You'd think that, like, I get it after like 9/11 or something like that. If you had no idea and then you're suddenly bombarded with the idea that this has that this is just this extreme tiny minority or something like that, I understand thinking that at that time. But you know, after the 45,000 terrorist attacks since then, it seems like you'd think, well, if it's really a tiny minority, I mean, haven't we got them by now? I mean, we keep catching them.
I never thought of that. Haven't we gotten them? Why are there keep on being more of them?
Yeah, isn't it weird? I mean, if you get the violent ones, you lock them up, or they die in their terrorist attacks. I mean, who's left? And it's just keep on rising. It's just jihadis keep on just coming out of nowhere. I don't know, man. It's weird.
That's crazy. All right, this is even crazier. This is the UK Consul General in Jerusalem, Diane Corner. And there she is with none other than Mahmoud Habash, who I was just quoting moments ago. Mahmoud Habash, in case you've already forgotten, is the guy who said Ramadan is not a month of laziness, but a month of activity, a month of jihad, conquest, and victory. Now there's Diane Corner, and she's meeting with him, I believe in Jerusalem, and they're having, no doubt, a quite productive tete-a-tete. But I wonder if Diane Corner, what Mahmoud Habash has said, and I don't think it's possible that she could be.
I think she probably is, and she's probably there to give him a medal. But I have to say, hats off to her, because if you'd before you showed me the picture, if you had explained the situation, I'd have thought like 99% chance she's wearing a hijab.
That's true.
And she didn't, so I was like, whoa, shocker.
Yeah, hats off to Diane for her courage in that regard. Okay, that's about it for the UK. There are a few more, but I'm going to swing over to the US. Actually, though, this is not a stupid infidels story. I'm sorry, I misfiled it. So, shall we stick with the stupid infidels for now, David?
It is. You literally run the show, sir.
All right, Sweden. Let me get a picture of this fellow. Let's see here. In Sweden, this is on the right. That's Hadi Bilal Mahdi. And he was named the Young Role Model of the Year not too long ago.
Awesome.
But this past week, he was sentenced for throwing stones at the cops. The Young Role Model of the Year. I'm sure they were very happy to have a Young Role Model of the Year who was a Muslim. What happened was there were riots over the Quran burning in Örebro in Norway. And did I say Sweden? Or is it Sweden or Norway? Hang on. I should know. Sweden. Sorry, not Norway.
They're all the same in our minds, Robert.
Yeah, all the, Scandinavia. Anyway, It's all one country in the risk board, so. Anyway, Orebro, the Quran riots, and Hani Bilal Mahdi cleans up after the rioters and distributes flowers to the local residents.
Nice.
But it turned out that he was actually covering for his role in the riots themselves, where he took part in throwing stones at police.
Can you imagine that, by the way? Like cops show up, there's a robbery. I mean, there's a burglary in the middle of the night at a jewelry store, and the cops run in there, and I'm in there burglarizing the place. I'm like, oh, I'm just cleaning up afterwards, officers. And they're like, oh, hey, let's give this guy a medal, make him a hero for helping clean up after the burglary. And then they see the video footage later, like, hey, wait a minute, he was burglarizing the place. He wasn't cleaning up.
It takes them. It takes them a long time. They have to weigh all the ramifications. All right, in France, this guy converted to Islam. Okay, a Frenchman. And he starts to get active in internet dawah. And so he is arguing with people online, and he writes, Islamist, actually, he wrote, which is strange, but probably a hangover from the fact that he's just a convert. Islamist jurisprudence agrees on the fact that homosexuality must be punished by the death penalty. And then he elaborates and says stoning, throwing from a high point, or death by fire. Now, he has just been sentenced for hate speech. But David, did he really, I mean, what, did he make that up? Is that an extremist version of Islam? And Islam is actually tolerant of all this behavior?
No, that's kind of Islam 101. The only room for disagreement on that stuff is where you would apply this. Many Muslims would say, yeah, we only apply this once we run the place, but we don't apply it now. And so, but that's the reason imams and sheikhs in general are not in trouble with the laws, is they're saying, okay, we're not enforcing this stuff right here. But that's the end goal for them.
So I think it's bitterly ironic that this poor fellow is on trial and is facing legal penalties for just saying what Islam teaches. Imagine how embarrassed the French authorities are going to be when they discover that what he's telling them is just mainstream Islam.
I'm completely serious here. If I were him, I would use that as my defense in court. I would say, are you saying that the Quran and Hadith, the Quran and the Sunnah, are you saying that those are hate speech? I want to know. I want you to declare it. And knowing that they're such cowards, they will never say it. If I were him, I would walk in there with the Quran and the Hadith in my hand and say, are you saying that this is hate speech right here that I'm holding in my hands?
Well, he's clearly not a tremendously knowledgeable convert, because he's already backing down. His defense is that he says, it was a bad joke. I wanted to respond to comments on social networks with irony. Now, that's not going to fly. There's nothing ironic about that. And it's not a joke. It's what Islam really teaches. So, strange story.
He's pulling a Cat Stevens here.
Yeah, that's true.
I just converted. I'm ready to kill everybody. Oh, now I'm catching a backlash. No, I changed my mind.
Yes. Okay, let's go to some actual jihad. We're down toward the bottom of the hour, so got a story out of Yonkers, New York over here.
I heard that one.
Yeah, you saw this. Am I right? Because you were talking about it on the Twitter. I saw you talking about it.
Yeah, we lived I guess about 13 years in the same spot. It's in the Bronx, but it's in Wakefield. That's the northern Bronx.
Yeah.
And we were right beside Bronx Boulevard is right beside this little bridge that crosses over into Yonkers. And as soon as you cross over into Yonkers, it becomes McLean Avenue. and that's where the parade is. So, and my kids went to school over there. My kids went to school over on McLean Avenue. So my wife and kids would go to this St. Patrick's Day parade. I think as the school. I think my kids have been in that parade before. And then and then I see this brilliant jihadi was planning a terrorist attack there on cops and stuff, planning a bloodbath, and it's just it's like when it's this abstract thing, like, oh, jihadis might actually kill someone somewhere. Politicians and journalists and everyone can kind of look the other way. But how do you do that when it's something that like you could get killed in or your family could get killed in, right? Because I mean, if you're like New York reporters and stuff, I mean, think you could have New York reporters reporting on the St. Patty's Day parade there and so on, and somehow you're still just a racist, Islamophobic, hate mongering bigot if you don't want your family to get slaughtered in the name of Allah at a parade.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, Ridon Kola, an Albanian. And I lived actually in an area where a lot of Albanians lived in the Bronx.
What'd you say his name was?
Ridon Kola.
The official drink of Ramadan.
Guaranteed no alcohol. All right, he says he actually sent a message to the Yonkers police. And he says, I will crucify Yonkers cops and their bosses all along McLean Avenue. It will be a horror scene. Allahu Akbar. He also posted online about jihad and about war against non-Muslims. A neighbor said, he's never exhibited weird behavior to me. He was never creepy. He was normal.
Yeah, they always take that as some sort of like consolation, like, oh, this guy who's going to go slaughter everyone in the name of Allah, or, in the case of people who did go out and slaughter people in the name of Allah, they were always normal. And it's like, that should tell you what the problem is, right? It's one thing if the guy has clearly been insane his entire life and then decides to go kill people. Then you could say, okay, mental illness. When he's entirely normal and decides, based on his study of his religion, that he has to go slaughter people in the name of Allah, the mental illness stuff is kind of off the table there.
Indeed. Indeed, you gotta wonder. Anyway, out of Austria, we have a case. There started to turn up, rather, in Austria, in Sankt Pölten, a lot of graffiti. And here's an example. Der Islam wird gewinnen mit oder ohne dich. Islam will win with or without you. And you can see the Shahada there. There's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet, written in the manner of the Islamic State, with the Muhammad is his prophet part in a circle. Underneath, there's no God but Allah. And the only thing that people could see about this guy, he left 12 messages of this kind in various areas. And he was captured on video, and they just said he's very short. So we have this pint-sized jihadi in Austria who was doing this. And then it turned out, when he was caught, he's from North Macedonia, and he is part of a group that was actually plotting jihad massacres in Vienna and Sankt Pölten. So, 12 graffiti messages, and it turned out that there was something quite disquieting behind them.
And they knew he was short because he couldn't reach very high with his graffiti, I guess?
Well, he was they saw him on the video. He had a hood over his head. But
I was thinking like all the stuff was like low down. like the graffiti was all 2 feet tall.
Well, when you look at it, yeah, I don't know how high that wall is, but it's not the graffiti's.
Yeah, like what if that is only 2 feet off the ground, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be. Could be. Pint-sized jihadi.
We've got a little guy.
Uh,
if anyone see him, if anyone you see him,
he was from North Macedonia, Sam. Sam asks, he wasn't from one of the Stanistan countries? No, North Mac. At least that's what they're reporting in what the reports I saw. Next door in Germany, I didn't want to catch this other stupid infidel story, David, but people will probably think that I'm just impossibly Islamophobic to even mention this as a stupid infidel story. But good news, feel-good story out of Dusseldorf. And this is on the Ellerstrasse in Dusseldorf, Eller Street. And they have put an Arabic street sign above. Not below, of course, but above the German language street sign. That also says Eller Street, Ellerstrasse. And I thought it was interesting to note that in the festivities, if you look at the picture here, the people who are clearly Germans are markedly older than the people who are clearly the Muslims. And I thought
that is the pattern, isn't it?
Yes. That was how actually the mass migration program was sold into Europe, sold to Europeans, that when they're with their low birth rates and aging populations, these people would come in and do work, when actually all they've done is come in and go on welfare for the most part. But why might it be something that they're going to come to regret, that they put up these Arabic street signs?
I don't know. It just seems like you keep making it a more and more inviting place for further rounds, but then, like, why do you even need to assimilate if all the signs and so on are in Arabic, right? Like why you don't even need to learn. You don't even need to learn German.
That's it.
We'll just adapt everything to you. And on the note of those all the young people, I mean, you remember the Arab Spring, where massive instability and all these problems in the Middle East, and therefore Europe needs to take in all these people who are going to die in the Middle East. And so you have these marches of tens of thousands of people, and they're all like 24 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wait a minute, the people who would, yes, we understand they're bad, dangerous places in the Middle East, but you're telling me the people who are best able to survive there are the ones that Europe takes in, and the people who are least able to survive, the old, women, kids, and so on, yeah, they can't make it out. So it's all these young guys leaving behind everyone who can't defend themselves.
Yep.
And yep, brilliant.
So you're
brilliant
also
stuff.
When you're talking about non-assimilation, David, it also should be noted that if you have the idea that you don't need to assimilate, that you continue to practice your own culture and your own religion in its fullness, then that also is going to include jihad and observance of Sharia, and consequently, it's just going to bring more trouble upon the non-Muslims in Germany.
Yeah, and I mean, notice it's a big parallel, right? Because, I mean, there are degrees here, but the ideal, at least, the ideal in the United States for centuries has been the idea of the melting pot. It's people come from different places in the world, but it gets melted together into one kind of new thing that's got influence from everyone, but it's this new thing. Whereas in the UK, especially in recent decades, it's the idea, the goal is multiculturalism, and it's basically understood that if you come to Europe and you adapt to European culture, it's actually bad. It's bad because we've like robbed you of your culture. Therefore, we need to encourage you not to adapt, not to assimilate. But it's just like, it's an outgrowth of that. Now you don't even want to say, hey, you're coming to Germany, learn German. That wouldn't be multicultural. So now everything has to, of course, be in Arabic and so on. And that is how cultures commit suicide.
Yeah, that's what we got here. And speaking of Germans, some German tourists decided to go to Israel on vacation. And they immediately rented a car when they got to Israel, and they drove to Nablus in the West Bank. And then their car was immediately surrounded and attacked by the Palestinians, who, because it was an Israeli rental car, you see, and so they saw Israeli plates, and they thought some Israelis have ventured into our area, started beating the car. You can see how they beat in the windshield. They were trying to pry open the door.
Tires are flat. Tires flat.
Tires are flat. These people just barely got out with their lives because the police were alerted and intervened. The Israeli police, that is. And so they had gone to Nablus probably because they are Germans. And what I mean by that is that in Germany, the government is very pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel, and is constantly telling the people how the Israelis are great oppressors and how the Palestinians are so oppressed and downtrodden. And this is the kind of thing that is going to happen, that the people, tourists, go to Israel from Germany and they think, hey, this is great. Look, now we're here, let's go to the Palestinian areas and say hello to our friends in Nablus, show our solidarity, and they end up becoming the focus of a jihad attack.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you know, Germany has obviously changed since Hitler, but some things haven't changed, right? This love affair between Germans and Muslims.
Yes, that has not changed.
That's still, and this hostility towards Jews. No, it doesn't change.
Yes. So even though Germany apologized, paid reparations, ostensibly has good relations with Israel, it still very much strongly supports the Palestinians, and probably has misled its people into thinking that they could do something like this, venture into these areas in an Israeli car and be unharmed.
But by the way, I mean, it is ironic. You remember, of course, what Hitler said when he was his table talk, when what he was saying behind the scenes, but complaining. Why did we have to have Christianity here? It's weakening our people. It's making us soft. I could be conquering the world if it weren't for Christianity making everyone not want to go on a killing spree. And he specifically said, why couldn't we have the religion of the Japanese or the Muslims? And his idea was he still believed in this master. He was this master race. But if they had a different religion, one that glorifies fighting and dying, and then going to paradise and getting your warrior's reward of spending eternity deflowering virgins, why couldn't we have that? So I mean, think about this. This was his idea back in the day. If you combined this superior German race with the ideas of these jihadis, we'd take over the world. And here we are all these decades later, and what are the German people doing? We need more of this jihad ideology over here to mix it in with the German people. They're doing, my goodness. I mean, if you had laid out a roadmap, if you had laid out a contingency plan for Hitler, like, okay, I'm taking on the entire world right now, but if I fail, we need to plan for the future. What would the master plan for the leader of the master race be? It would be, we need the German people, but we need jihad. And if you give us that, we will take over the entire world. And what are they doing? What are they? Hey, let's make all the signs. Let's make all the street signs in Arabic now. They're setting it up, man. They're setting it up. Never trust jihadis and never trust Germans. I don't trust either one of them.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Moving right along then. France. In France, 30 graves in the St. Louis Cemetery in Évreux, somewhere in France. A Senegalese national was arrested because 30 graves were desecrated. And Senegal is 97% Muslim, so it's a 97% chance that this gentleman is a Muslim. And in his desecration of the graves, he made sure to break the crosses that were on the grave stones. Why would he want to do that, David?
I mean, that's a lifelong goal in Islam. I mean, that's what Jesus is going to do when he comes back. He's going to break all the crosses.
Yep. And so he is just doing what a prophet would do. And we are told in the Quran that Abraham is an excellent example and that Muhammad is an excellent example. There are some exceptions made for Abraham in chapter 60, but none for Muhammad in chapter 33. They are both excellent examples. So by extension, also Jesus would be an excellent example, the Muslim prophet that is, when he breaks crosses. Also in France, a Muslim who is on the S-File, which is their terror watch list. And he has a history, a record, they say, of Islamist radicalization. He walked into a church, and what do you think he did, David?
Sorry, a song just entered my head. Stepped into a church I saw along the way. Well, I got down on my knees, and I began to pray. So
I began to pray.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a beautiful thing. But he did not get on his knees and begin to pray. Instead, he stole a crucifix, a 2-meter-high crucifix. And this crucifix supported a wooden Christ dating from the 17th century. And he went around the corner outside the church and broke it into pieces. Here again, we see the common thread there, break the cross. In Uganda, we also see Christian interaction between Christians and Muslims. Mosque leaders in Uganda invited a Christian preacher to debate. And they did a debate. And after the debate, 37 Muslims converted to Christianity. So it was a very effective debate for this Christian, Pastor Arthur Asadi Babi. And so after 37 Muslims converted to Christianity, the people who invited him to debate came and beat him senseless. They didn't kill him, but he was 8 days in the hospital, has injuries to his neck. Why might there be injuries to his neck?
I suspect you know the answer to that, Robert.
I was thoroughly flummoxed, Dave. I have no idea. Why injuries to his neck?
Weird stuff.
Yeah, it's very strange.
The world may never know.
When you meet the unbelievers, strike the necks, folks. That's what it says in the Quran, chapter 47, verse 4. So that's what this guy did. Okay, let's see. Interesting case out of Iraq, David. Iraq banned the import, production, and sale of alcoholic beverages. But Iraq still has, although it's substantially reduced in the last few years, they still have a sizable non-Muslim population, more sizable than in some of the neighboring countries, not Syria, but some of the neighboring countries. Christians, Yazidis, Zoroastrians, Mandeans. I studied those Mandeans in college. Man, that's a very strange religion. I got their holy book out of the library. I didn't understand a word of it. But anyway, any Mandeans here can explain it to us. Maybe we'll talk about that soon. But in any case, they protested, and actually the protesters went out and chanted, Iraq is not an Islamic country. And that is true in the sense that it's not a Sharia state. And so they're giving fines up to $19,000 for drinking alcohol, which is not the Sharia punishment either, as far as I know. But in any case, it's interesting to note. It's that in a lot of these countries where Sharia is not the law of the land, it nonetheless has such a strong cultural influence that laws like this can be passed. And then the people who think, hey, I'm here, I'm okay because it's not a Sharia state, they find out that their position is a bit more precarious than they may have imagined.
Yeah, it's and that does seem to be the underlying method of Sharia. It's if you can impose this in all its glory, like in Afghanistan, then you do it. If you can't, then impose it as far as you're able. Mm-hmm. And I mean that's the case even in like Canada and the US and UK, and let's go as far as we can with it at this time. And then, you know, it's the same thing when we talk about Nigeria, like here's the dividing line, and they keep trying to push it further, but they do that not just with land as well. It's with laws and everything else. You just, okay, here's the line, here's as far as we can go right now, but we want to keep pushing that just a little farther each year as time goes on. And before you know it, you're in a Sharia compliant hellhole.
Yeah. And so we go to moderate Indonesia, which is how it used to be referred to all the time, but it's less often called modern Indonesia now. And in northeastern Indonesia, the northeastern portion of Borneo Island, in North Kalimantan province, Tarakan City, Selumet Village, Mawar Sharon Christian Church was building a new building. But the local Muslims actually blocked the construction of this new church. Why might they have done this, David?
Well, that's part of Sharia. You can't even repair a damaged church under Sharia. If you have a church and part of the roof falls in, you can't even repair it. It's a brilliant strategy. Hey, let's all come to this dhimmi arrangement here, and yeah, you can have your church. You just can't repair it anymore, and you can't build any new ones, and you can't repair the old ones. Well, guess what? You let things set for a couple centuries, and no more churches.
That's the story of Egypt. That's the story of North Africa. Story of the entire Islamic world, really.
It is interesting how it's like so forward thinking, right? It's like long term. Here's how you subjugate someone over the long term.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that people don't realize about the headlines that we talk about in this show. That this is the same procedure that has been done throughout history. That, for example, I got a story here out of Pakistan. Muslims drive Hindus out of their village in Sindh, in Thar Parkar, Sindh. And sorry, I'm just thinking about Thapaka and Havidyad. Anyway, Thapaka in Sindh, Thar Parkar, they drive the Hindus out of the village, then there are no more Hindus in the village. Hindus have probably been there for well over a millennium. But they drive them out, they make it impossible for them to return. A generation goes by, nobody even remembers that Hindus were there. You know, my own family is from the Ottoman Empire, and I read a book once about another family in very similar circumstances from the same area. And the woman actually took her grandmother back to Turkey to visit the city she grew up in. And they got there and said, where were the Christians' houses? Where are the houses the Christians used to live in? And the people in this town actually said to them, no Christians ever lived here. So there you go. And see, this is what's happened. When we see a story like this, Muslims drive Hindus out of their village in Pakistan, that's what happened to make Egypt Muslim, and to make North Africa Muslim, and to make Syria and Iraq and all the rest of them Muslim. That people were driven out of their town, their church was destroyed, they were not allowed to build a new church where they were living. These things all cumulatively, over centuries, they erased the entire non-Muslim population. And it's happening now.
There is no right of return for any of them except one particular group, Robert.
That's right. And speaking of that one particular group, I got a story out of Israel, David. In Israel, it has come to the attention of the UNESCO, actually, which is deeply biased, nonetheless, against Israel. But they're actually having to notice that the Palestinians are busy destroying ancient ruins, paving over First Temple relics and burial sites that show that there was an ancient Jewish presence in the land. They're trying to completely erase it in the areas that they control. And that also, it's part of the same thing. The pre-Islamic past is Jahiliyyah, the society of unbelievers. It has no value. And you erase it, then you erase also any claim that non-Muslims may have over the land. So these things are not phenomena only of our own time, and they are not insignificant. They're quite important, as a matter of fact, because they show exactly how the Islamic world advances at the expense of the non-Muslim world, the Dar al-Islam at the expense of the Dar al-Harb, and so on.
You'd think that after seeing this go on for 14 centuries, like someone at some point would catch on, right?
You'd think.
It's like, I mean, it's like if you're, let's say you're NFL, NFL team, and you're playing against another team. Imagine another team that just always ran the exact same play for the entire history of the NFL. They run one play over and over and over again. It's like, how do you still not prepare for that play? Like, and still the play catches you off guard every time. You're like, whoa, yes. I can't believe they did that. It makes no sense.
Yep. Every opposing coach always says, the one thing we know they won't do is run that one play.
Yeah, well, they won't run that one play that they've been running consistently for forever.
And if you say that they're going to run that one play, they kick you off the team.
See, these are the skits we need to make, right? We actually have two football teams, and one team just keeps running the exact same play, and the other team is just baffled.
I love it.
Or better yet, someone just comes along and tells the coach and the players, if you think they're going to run that play that they've run 10,000 times over and over again, the only play that's in their book, and even though you have their playbook, someone smuggled a copy of their playbook and they've only got one play in it, if you think they're going to run that play, you're evil. And then just because they're told that, they never prepare for the play. Yeah,
you get banned from the league if you say they're going to run the one play they actually run.
Roger Goodell steps in. And
oh, man. This would be a killer skit. Mm-hmm. I'll book a flight right away. Okay. Out of Malaysia. In Malaysia, there was a film made called Mentega Terbang. And it has something to do with Islam. People are saying that it insults Islam. And so the film director actually had his car vandalized. People threw acid on his car and threatened to kill him in a follow-up because his film is insulting to Islam. And obviously that's the same old story, is it not, David?
Yep, that's the one we keep hearing.
That if you have a problem, you have somebody who has done something you don't like, resort to violence. That is the first and only response. Another very similar story out of France. There were a couple of journalists, Ophélie Meunier and Amin El-Bahi, who went into a no-go zone in France and reported on it a few years back. And now 10 Muslims have been arrested for threatening to murder these two reporters. And they've been charged with aggravated harassment because they reported on a no-go zone. Does this mean there are no no-go zones? Or do you think that they think these people were lying?
Yeah, I don't know. I heard that so many times, Robert. I heard that so many times that there are no no-go zones in Europe. So there can't be.
Yeah, there can't be.
Because that's what I heard.
So it must be true.
Mm-hmm.
So the real thing, the problem here is slander. And we have to understand that slander, as defined in Islamic law, is not saying something false. It's not lying about somebody. It is saying something about them that they do not want you to know. David, people keep saying I'm breaking up. Am I breaking up?
No.
Well,
not
I'm
for me.
sorry. Folks, I'm sorry I'm breaking up, but we're almost out of time here, so we're going to do the big breaking up pretty soon. I apologize for the poor connection. I live out in the middle of nowhere, and that might have something to do with it, but it's late to try to fix it now.
Well, it's also possible that that's on their computer, so.
Okay. That may well be.
John Doe said sound is fine.
Thanks, John.
Well, see, he said no, sound is great. Okay,
John,
so everyone is disagreeing.
All right. Anyway, the Islamic State, ISIS, has called for retaliation. They want to kill Rasmus Paludan for burning the Quran, and they want to kill the Prime Minister of Sweden, Stefan Löfven, for allowing him to burn the Quran. And they say, attack the Crusaders with bloodshed and rent off body parts. What they wanted there was rend. Rend means tear. But they said rent off body parts, like $20 for your arm.
Oh, yeah, $50. Rent your arm for 20.
Yep. Build an edifice with their skulls. Besiege them and coerce them. Tear their bodies apart in the streets, O Muslims. Torture them. There is no pity or mercy with those. So fight the leaders of disbelief and sever off the heads of evil. That's the parting message this week, ladies and gentlemen, from the Religion of Peace. Yes?
Oh, I was just going to point out, like, it's a parallel to like Afghanistan and all these other situations where you Western nations don't do the basics of what it would take to win. And so you just end up with eternal ongoing conflict. Right now, you still have jihadis who want to kill cartoonists and kill people for burning Qurans. And you have violent riots over all these things. Guys, we could shut down the violent responses instantly. I mean, instantly. Done deal. ISIS says, kill these guys over burning the Qurans. Okay, great. The next day, 10,000 people go out and burn Qurans and say, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to kill us all? If you complain after that, you say, fine, let's bring out 100,000 Qurans, and you do it. Again, I'm like Robert. I don't believe in burning books. I think it's a lame form of criticism. The exception is when someone's saying, we're going to murder you for doing that. Then all of a sudden I want to do it. Then all of a sudden you have to do it, because if you don't, you send the message that threatening us with violence is a way to control our behavior. You can't let people control your behavior through threats of violence. And therefore, you just have to say, okay, what you're threatening us for, we're going to do it now until you stop threatening us. And if people kept escalating their insults or cartoons or whatever it happens to be in response to threats escalating, guess what? The point of the threats is to get you to stop doing something. If the people making the threats realize that their threats have the opposite impact and it's leading to more insults, more cartoons, more burned Qurans, that's a pretty big incentive for them to change their behavior. In other words, they're thinking in terms of modifying your behavior. All we would have to do is think for 5 seconds, no, we can actually reverse that and modify their behavior and stop all this violent nonsense.
Indeed. Unfortunately, not going to happen. Not enough infidels would dare to do it. Meanwhile, though, with that ISIS threat in mind, the head of CENTCOM, the U.S. Central Command, Military Command, General Michael Kurilla, says that the Islamic State Khorasan province, which is ISIS in Afghanistan, will be able to attack the United States in less than 6 months. So we might see them renting body parts in the United States sooner than anybody would want. In any case, on that happy note, pray, hope, and don't worry. And if there is any, in the unlikely event that there is jihad during Ramadan, yes, David.
Oh, I just wanted to point out House of Hikmah, everyone. He's going live, and he says going live in about 20 minutes. So I'll probably jump on there with him. So if anyone wants to chill and hang out afterwards, we'll be over on House of Hikmah. You can see this.
House of Hikmah, ladies and gentlemen.
House of Hikmah.
And if there's any jihad during Ramadan, which is virtually inconceivable, then we will likely, God willing, be back at this space next week. Same time, same channel. God bless.